I'm gonna get started. So good evening, everyone. Hope you've enjoyed your Tuesday so far. I'm Danielle. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Executive Director of NAMI Northern Illinois. Before introducing you to our guests tonight, I'd like to make you aware of some of our upcoming events. Next Tuesday, April 19th at noon, we will have Donna Addison, who is a licensed clinical professional counselor and board certified registered art therapist, presenting the genderbread journey on persons with mental illness in the LGBTQ plus community. Donna will present on identifying the difference between biological sex, gender identity, gender expression, and attraction as related to mental health treatment, give you a better understanding on the LGBTQ plus community and how those with mental illness fit within this community, and teach you how to create an affirming environment for this community, especially for those in mental health treatment. Beginning April 25th, if you know anyone who is Spanish speaking and also an adult who is caring for another adult or a loved one with a mental illness, our Familia a Familia de NAMI education course will begin at the end of this month. Beginning May 1st, to celebrate Mental Health Awareness Month, NAMI Northern Illinois has created a 31-day mental health challenge. This is a series of daily tasks to bring your brain health to the forefront of your thoughts. We will be challenging individuals through our social media channels and newsletter recipients to tag along. Tuesday, May 10th at 5:30 p.m. is our annual membership meeting at Stepping Stones of Rockford. We will be voting on our board of director nominees. Following the vote, we will hold a program on teen mental health. During this presentation, you will gain insights into the minds and worlds of the modern day teenager. And just because I said membership meeting, it is open to everyone, even if you're not a member. And finally, Monday, June 6th at Forest Hills Country Club, we'll be hosting our annual event, Mulligans for Mental Illness Golf Play Day. There are still sponsorship opportunities as well as spots for golfers and the after hours event. So this is your invite to join us. I will follow up with all of you in an email about the events that I mentioned, but now on to our presentation. So I am joined this evening by Dr. Judy Cunningham, my buddy. Judy received her training at Northern Illinois University. Aside from her doctorate, she also is a certified positive psychology coach and EAGALA therapist. She has worked with youth, parents, and teachers in Rockford, Beloit, and Elkhorn, Wisconsin schools over 50 years as a counselor, math teacher, and principal. In these areas, much of her time was spent as an at-risk counselor or alternative school principal, mostly focusing on finding each person's strengths and ways to utilize the strength for a productive life. Her last private practice position was a residential school in Freeport, Illinois. During the many hours of classes on technique and practice with youth, her passion outside of her career was always horses, which initially was training and showing them. However, one of her youth came to her farm for a respite visit for his foster parent for only 4 hours, where he played with the horses by petting and talking to them. He went back to school the next day and was a changed student for the positive. Judy then went looking for what was happening with the individual in the horse pen and found equine assisted growth and learning, or better known as EAGALA, in the United Kingdom. Then found a small program in the US based in Utah. After fulfilling the 6,000 hours of work with horses, she took the EAGALA training and formed Lucky's Farm Incorporated, where equine therapy was her mythology. This amazing treatment was more successful than traditional talk therapy. Today, she will share with you the concepts of EAGALA and make it so effective. Judy, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Am I unmuted?
You're good, yep.
Okay, if you start out, that black horse you see is actually the founder of Farm Incorporated and my search for EAGALA. If you've been in Rockford, you've seen this horse pulling a wagon in Rockford parades. You saw him on the Starlight stage in Music Man pulling the instruments on. This animal just loves people. We used to say he'd be a lap dog if he could figure out how to be a lap dog. However, you can't tell it, but he is 2,200 pounds and he's a Shire. So he's a very large horse. And what he does and what he did, the first tenets that I'm going to talk to you are what make EAGALA different. Because I really have been a counselor for 50 years, because I finished my doctorate in 1972. So this is it. This is 50. And I've done in school, out of school, at parks and all over. This is so amazing. It's magic. So what clean language is the foundation. It's different. And what that does, it allows our clients to share things they didn't know. And you may ask, what is clean language? Clean language means, and the best example I can give you, instead of walking in and saying, okay, you're here for counseling because this piece of paper says you're depressed, I would come in and comment on something they might have on or something they might have in their hand. So in other words, I'm referring to the human and allowing the human to tell me. And I'm going to tell you stories as we move through this. The second part, well, come on. The second part is the power of pause. Any of you who have had a practice, you're sitting in your office, you're not talking, the client's not talking, and there's that pregnant silence that you're trying to figure out, okay, I got to get smart. How can I stop this silence? Opposite is true with EAGALA. We allow it to pause. We allow the client to process the information because that's how the change happens from the inside out. This concept is using metaphor. It's where something the horse does to with the client becomes a metaphor for deeper meaning in their life. I can give you examples of that. Simple, someone goes up and starts petting the horse, and the horse puts their nose on their shoulder. And I had a client start sobbing because nobody had ever their arms around that person again. Now, granted, that was a COVID time, but just the way the horse moved around that person brought out deeper feelings. So the next thing that I personally am looking for when I'm doing equine is what we call spuds. When you finish the EAGALA program, you're going to get a plastic potato, and you're supposed to put that around where you are. But what it means is what we are looking for as part of the counseling is shifts, patterns, something different about that horse that they don't normally do. And then the S is, how can I take my preconceived notions and not let them become a part of the counseling session? And I think that last one, your preconceived notions, is probably one of the keys. But I've had horses we'll have someone in the arena, and I generally have two. If it's just one person, if I had a family of three, and with those we used 4 horses because then they could each kind of pet their own. But all of a sudden the horses are going around and around and around, which was not a pattern for either of those 2 horses. They tended to be the horses that would prefer to go to sleep and not move that much. And I asked the client, I said, what's happening? She says, that's the way my life is. And I said, what do you mean? Well, you see those horses going around and around? And I said, yes, that's the way my life is. It just keeps going around in this awful circle and I can never get ahead. Now, that's not something that would have come out of pretty much any real talk therapy, but just saying, why are the horses doing that? Those are the basic foundations or tenets that makes EAGALA different. It is a different mental health technique. And I wish in 1972, I had had those 4 tenets, because I would have been a much better counselor. So now we're going to look at what is the equine assisted therapy model. If you can imagine a person doing a ropes course, some of the other kinds of courses that are offered, like at Camp Winnebago here in Rockford, it's those kinds of activities that bring a mental health issue to the forefront of your client. But as far as the psychotherapy model, they require professionalism. For example, that 6,000 hours, they're serious about that. It has to be 6,000 documented hours. And if you look at most of our programs, none of them ask for 6,000 hours. And then you go to the week-long program. And the testing at the end, I laughed. I write tests for, obviously, for the school system and that sort of thing. That was probably one of the most difficult tests I've ever taken, including comprehensive finals for my doctorate, because it's all situations and how would you respond using the EAGALA model. Plus, every 2 years, in order to keep your certification, you have to have 20 hours of some kind of extra training, whether it's through going to meetings or whether it's doing other activities. It's some other kind of training. So as far as professionalism, ethics are a key issue. We have a whole ethics model in our central office in Utah that you need to communicate with when you're in practice. It's the team approach. When I have a client in the arena, I have generally 2 horses. They're part of the team. And the other person that's in the arena with me is known as the equine specialist. Their job is to watch for those spuds, know the horses, and help with safety. My job as a clinician is to bring in the clinical aspects, but remembering the clean language. And the biggest thing I have to do is learn the prompts that work, because we all have prompts. You know, how are you doing today? Or what's something good that happened? Or those kind of prompts. But part of figuring out which prompt to say is based on your interview when the person decides they would like to do the equine therapy. Qualifications, I think I've already talked about those. You have to be a licensed mental health counselor, therapist in each state that you work with, because this is an international license. So when I move to Texas, I'll still have to take my counseling license and have it renewed in Texas. The horse is part of your professional. And horses that are really good at doing this, I had 2. I didn't allow anybody to ride them. Those horses only did EAGALA. And when someone came into their space, whether it was the pasture or the arena, they knew their job was to read that person, and they would. It's kind of fascinating how they just seem to know. I had, at one point, I had 16 horses out here. Those particular 2 were just exceptional, but I did have 6 others that I would use. The one thing that I have learned is that horses get tired. When you're doing sessions back to back, you see them losing their patience with the human. Horses tell you when they've lost their patience, usually by laying their ears flat back on their head, or I had one of those horses that was particularly good, would come over and grab my coat or whatever I had on. Like, hey, it's time to go home. I don't want to do this anymore. So I knew that 2 sessions back to back was it for each horse, which is why having 6 horses enabled me to run a full practice. Ground-based, this is the other thing. Nobody's sitting on the horse. When you're sitting on a horse, you have become part of the horse's environment for fear, because humans are prey to a horse. So when you're sitting on them, they have to trust you. They have to allow you to be a part of them. And when you're working with them on the ground, it's like you're just coming in their space and they like to get to know you. No, nothing in EAGALA puts halters or lead ropes or anything on the horses. The horses are free rein. They are free in the space to do as horses do. The people are on the ground, so it's all feet on the ground. The horse happens to jump or something. So it's completely ground based. And I'm going to get to the safety aspect a little bit more later, but that's probably one of the big differences in this with horses. And insurance companies actually like us because we can see gain in 3 or 4 or 5 sessions. And in a office-based practice, you don't usually see gain in 3 or 4 or 5 practices, 5 sessions, I should say. It's experimental. It's all experiential. It's all hands-on and concrete. The thing is solution orientated. When you take a client into the arena or the horse's space, you have a goal. You're not going in there to pet the horses. Like the one that Danielle told you about, that was an accident. And it just worked that way. That particular individual was one of the first that I realized EAGALA was something special and something different about therapy. And then the last is the ethics foundation. There's this very strong ethics. In other words, if I wanted to switch it to have somebody sitting on a horse, I would break the ethics code. And depending on where you're at, if you get found out, you'll lose your license. So the whole thing with ethics, we have a meeting every 2 weeks internationally, so it's people from all over the world. And ethics is part of the discussions. So it's really ingrained in you that you need to take the model and do it the way it's supposed to be done and not add to it tweaks to it. But your prompts allow you to be creative, and other ways that you work with the individual allows you to have some creativity. Okay, why horses instead of dogs? Or instead of just using the clean language in an office and hope that there will be change? And I listed why horses with the next screen. First thing is, horses are big. I told you about Bucky. He is a huge horse. He's a Shire, which is one of the biggest of the draft horses. He would be about 4 inches taller than a Clydesdale, to give you a reference. And the fact that that individual that was a DCFS student that you heard about would just walk in and start cuddling and playing with an animal this size, and their instincts, it tend to be afraid around horses because they move, they have big feet, they look vicious sometimes. So the big thing is the flight. Their biggest natural instinct is to run. If you and a horse are having a disagreement, that horse is going to run away from you. And if you've ever been to a horse show or a fair and you've seen someone's horse dancing sideways or backwards out of wherever they're supposed to be, it means that that horse is not connecting with the human and it's trying to get away. And I can say that flight instinct because I've trained and showed horses since I was a child. My parents, I'm a third generation equestrian family. And I was actually an alternate for the 1980 Olympics in dressage. So that flight instinct in a horse, you're not going to make a horse do anything with any of your clients. The horse has to decide they're going to. And that's another thing that makes things different about equine psychotherapy compared to others. A dog, you can train to love you no matter what. Not so much with a horse. A horse will respond to you based on what you've done to them in this very moment. So if I was nice and sweet and gave them sweet treats yesterday, and then I come in the pasture today and I'm grumpy and not feeling like sweet treats and just want to grab him and move him to wherever he needs to go, I'm going to have problems with that horse. In the moment, that horse says, you're grumpy. I don't want to be around you. I'm out of here. And that's what they will do. Horses also are experts at reading body language. That's why they're still alive. If they were not experts at reading body language, our Native Americans would never have survived, and horses would have been destroyed by lions and tigers and those kinds of animals who would climb a tree and jump on the horse's back and then start eating them, which is how horses are an animal of prey. Horses will mirror what your client is feeling. I told you about that client that I had, and the horses were going round and around and around the arena really fast. And her response was, yep, that's what my life is. So they will mirror. Another funny example on that particular case is he had one of my last clients before, and I'll tell you, the place is closed at this moment. One of the last clients I had was a young middle school student, and that person was in the arena, and one of those horses that always was really good started yawning, and she yawned, and she yawned. And I said, wow, that horse is opening her mouth. And she said, yep, she's yawning because I'm tired. I'd really like to lay on this dirt and just take a nap. And I said, let's try something, because there were two horses in the arena. Go over to the other horse and see what he does. She did, and that horse started yawning. So both of them were reflecting on the fatigue of that middle school student who is very active in athletics and all this kind of stuff. So that's probably one of the strongest reactions I've seen, was that yawning and the run around and around. Horses will pick up when you're incongruent. If you're trying to play nicey nice, but you really don't feel nicey nice, they're not going to come near you. They're just going to stand at the end of the arena and look at you like, okay, what's next? Horses will challenge the client awareness. In other words, they will do things to you or to the client that challenges. They are in constant communication. That's how they've survived in one form or another. So that's what your equine specialist is in the arena for, is to read that communication so that the mental health specialist can read the body language of the client. It is an alternative or in addition to traditional therapy. I've used it twice in addition to traditional therapy with a lot of success. I and their traditional therapist are in communication. So we are both on the same page as to what the client goals are. Okay, so let's see what's next. What does the EAGALA model look like? This is just a pasture that I used for a screen to come up with what does it look like. If you come out to look at an EAGALA model and you're a group, this might be what it would look like. You see the two horses and you see several people. Those people are not from here, but they're locked arm in arm, and their purpose was to make a connection with the horses and see if they could get the horses to do something on the other side of the arena. So in order to do it, they had to lock arms to connect with each other. So in other words, the solution was, how can this group of people work together to accomplish some kind of a goal with the horses? When I get to the screen, there is a facility in Elgin that does a lot of work with businesses and interaction so people will work together instead of working against each other. And they will have all of their people come in at one time and do sessions. During those group sessions, they're handled a little differently because the psychology is a little different, but the psychology is how can we learn to communicate with each other? And that's what the horses and their activity is going to do. So then now we get out here, and there's Lucky again, that partner that I told you about. This is an individual session. This is an individual who motivate himself to finish his college work. And he just kind of wanted to play video games and was here at the request of a family member who thought video games for a lifetime was probably not a good career. So he came out, and you can tell it was wintertime, and spent 4 sessions in the pasture with the horses in the snow. And my prompts to him was, how are these horses like a video game? And he was able to interact with the horses, but through that interaction, he did decide to finish school and make his parents much happier. But it was the interaction of the horses that brought it out. His had contact with me, and they say he's still motivated. He's still doing what he needs to do in life and making good choices. Prior to that, he was not. So it is through the way these two horses interact with him. You notice he's kind of peeking around him, because I did not say a whole lot except for how are the horses like a video game. And the equine specialist just kind of watched that he didn't get too close to a part of the horse that might have been a step or a step on or something like that. And so his sessions were really very quiet. There wasn't a lot of talk. It was more allowing him horses and connect with himself. Now, metaphors with the horse's movement. This is not here. This is actually in Elgin. And what this is, the person that you have in there has been asked to get that horse to go over that little jump that's up in front, because her session was based on the fact that she was depressed and not functioning well. So in order to create that metaphor, she's connecting with the horse. And when the horse started following her around the arena, she was just thrilled. And the rest becomes a client issue. But through a task, she was able to create a metaphor with the horse. And that's my job as the clinician. And sometimes the equine specialist will also jump in and be a part of that and try to help that metaphor happen. All we do is open the door and see if the metaphor will or within the client. Okay, what makes EAGALA different than regular talk therapy? And why is it effective? This screen I had to put in here because so many people say, isn't it just playing with horses? It is playing with horses for a purpose. It's like the people who go to a horseshoe show. They play with their horse to get a ribbon and to show people that their horse will do something another horse won't. But EAGALA is different. In the therapy, it's using the horse's natural curiosity and ability to read body language to create the mental health moment. The therapeutic setting is the arena, the client, the free rein horses, the equine specialist, and the mental health therapist. The client uses that space, including the horses, to demonstrate an emotion or the problem they're trying to solve. So it's within whatever space they are, whether it's outside or it's inside. Funny story about using space. Autistic individual. A cat decided that cats usually live in barns, if you're not familiar with them, because barns have mice and feed. And so feral cats usually live in barns, and most barn owners will have their feral cats neutered and their rabies shot so that people can just pet them. Okay, so a cat walks through the arena. The autistic individual that I was working with was much more interested in the cat and completely ignored the horses and just sat down on the arena floor and was petting that cat. And through that became the metaphor that autistic individual was able to actually begin to make some changes, open up in school. So you use whatever happens to be in the space. I've been in sessions in training sessions, and we've laughed where people, especially autistic kids, tend to focus on everything in your environment. But a kid would focus on the turtle that happened to be around. So whatever's in your environment becomes part of the EAGALA therapy. Okay, why is it effective? I think I've already told you, but I'm going to summarize one more time. Clear language, that's the secret. Clear language lets the client's mental health state become the metaphor of change and understand. I use language. If they say the horse jumped, I'll say the horse jumped. I don't use horse terms. I use whatever term the client is using or whatever I see, like the yawning situation. That horse opened its mouth. I didn't say the word yawn. I knew that's what it was, but I allowed the client to reflect on the yawn. This language is not, horse typical language is not a part. Sessions can be very quiet, allowing the client to process and think about things, as compared to the session where somebody's supposed to be talking all the time. And that's probably one of the biggest things that counselor has to learn is to accept the quiet. Because about the time you interfere with the quiet, you have messed up their metaphor. And they'll tell you so sometimes, or they'll shut down. So it's really important. And that's actually, we had a training session, 2 training sessions on the therapist being quiet during the session instead of wanting to talk. We counselors like to think we can talk a lot. Okay, now here's the safety aspect. Isn't the horse therapy dangerous? Is it safe? Yes, because everybody has feet on the ground. The horses, if I've had people go in and start hitting the horse, well, they're very simple. They just walk away because a human hitting them is not hard enough that the horse is going to be worried about that hitting. So they just walk away. I'm out of here. You're going to do that to me? I'm not here. You want to pet me? I stay. So that's very simple with the way the horse responds. Because everybody has feet on the ground, the human can also get away if they want to. Now, there are times when a human is doing something that seems somewhat unsafe. And so I or the equine specialist might say, come over and talk to us. We're removing the human from an unsafe situation. And then we're allowing them to tell us what was going on. We're giving the horse a chance to decide if I want to leave or am I safe where I'm at. The biggest thing we're looking for is discrepancies in movement of that horse. That horse has a pattern. We know that the horses that I've talked to you about, they've been so good. I know what those horses are going to do. They're going to walk up. They're going to put their nose on your shoulder. They're going to sniff your nose and your face and breathe and smell your breath, because once they've smelled your breath, then they will know you the next time you're there, and they can pick up right where they left off before. Now, if that horse doesn't come up to the client and do that, then I know there's something going on. The vibes from the client to the horse are not conducive to that horse being friendly. And it's interesting, every time that's happened, anger has come out. And when we talk about handling anger around the horse, as I have the person practice relaxing, doing breathing exercises, and all of the traditional things that we learn in counseling, the horses will change and come right up to them. And it's fascinating for me to watch this change. The client doesn't really realize that much change, but they are realizing of how their anger can make people go away from them or not want to be around them. The change occurs internally in the clients. It's from the inside out, as compared to a traditional sitting in an office where it's from the outside in. It's that interaction between the horse, the client, and they create a new life story. Is there any questions? Danielle, can I ask for questions somewhere in here?
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have any questions while I'm at this point? Because then I'm going to kind of move into another section, because it's been 45 minutes. So do you have any questions on the basic tenets of what EAGALA or equine psychotherapy is?
If you guys want to, you can unmute yourselves and talk, or type it in the chat box if you have questions.
None? Okay. This section is where I want to tell you some stories, because it is through life stories that made EAGALA come alive for me. And as I told you, this is my 50th year of being a counselor. And yes, I thought I was going to retire, but I'm subbing at a school an hour and a half from here. So I am still being a counselor. So it is through these stories that has made me use EAGALA. And once again, I'm watching the key tenets of EAGALA make a difference in this school. But the first story is that individual that Danielle told you about. Because he was a DCFS student and because his parents were deceased, which is why they found him, because he was locked in a closet for 5 years, which I have kind of maintained some contact with him. And a year from now, he's going to graduate from Northern Illinois University. When he came to the big high school here in Rockford that had 5,000 students in it, he couldn't read a word. The only reason he was in high school is because that was his age, because they could not put him in a first grade classroom as a 14-year-old. So it's through that EAGALA, and as I said, we have maintained contact just as an assistance to try to help him survive life with no family. And he'll call me and say, I need to come and talk to the horses. I really got a bad test and I'm really stressed. And my answer is always the same. Make sure you shut the gates. It's okay. And I know he's been here 3 or 4 times and it's been finals and when it's been rough time, and he'll just go in the horse pasture, talk to him, do whatever makes EAGALA work for him. And then he goes back to NIU and does his job. But to give you an example, a student that I had at that brick and mortar setting in Freeport was an individual that had not told his story of abuse ever as a 19-year-old. The only reason they knew the story of abuse is because his little brother told. He couldn't bring him out with the horses because at that point the director would not allow it. So I had 6 things on my desk and I said, show me how you're feeling today using these. And there were just basic things that a counselor would have on their desk: a roll of tape, a pen, some paper clips, and a cup, just little stuff like that. And so he's messing with the stuff. He picked up the cup and he taped the pen to the cup. And it was one of those old-fashioned desks that had the hole in it for the typewriter cord. And so he started flicking stuff down that hole. And my comment to him was, "Whoa, what's happening with that hole?" That's his response was, "That's my life." As he went into the abuse that had happened that he had not ever told anyone else. Something about the cup and the pen and that hole in the desk created a metaphor that he felt safe enough to talk about that abuse, and it allowed healing to occur. Other story, teenage girl on all the wrong things. Mother brought her here to see if I could help her make better friend choices. And I said, well, I don't think I can do that, but we'll go in with the horses and we'll see how that works. She went in with the horses and messed around with them and was talking about how the fuzzy horses made her feel warm and fuzzy, and she liked that and that kind of stuff. And we talked about her school, and she hated school, which was not a surprise. She hated her teachers, which was also not a surprise. And I said, well, what do you like about your life right now? Well, she liked her dog. So we talked about how her dog made her feel. Well, there's something that I do as part of EAGALA that most people don't do. This is something that I've added, because of my work with the at-risk people, I buy these little baby horses from a company, and that I can get like 12 of them for $5. So they're just little fuzzy horses. So what I do, and particularly with this student, I said, okay, take this little horse home, because she had named that horse, one of the horses in the arena, Matilda. Back up a second. I never tell them the names of the horses. People name the horses. I've had my horses be their ex-wife, which is kind of interesting in that case. So the horses get different names depending on the client. Well, this horse was, one of the horses was named Matilda. And I said, well, tell me about Matilda. Matilda is somebody in a storybook that I read in 5th grade, and she's now in freshman in high school. In 5th grade, and Matilda did everything right. And I said, oh, so that's something you're interested in. So when I gave her the little horse, I said, this is your Matilda. So take Matilda with you, and when you need to talk to her this week, before next week, you can do that. So 4 sessions later, her pediatrician took her off of her anxiety meds because she was not feeling anxiety anymore, and she was participating in class. Things were going well. She's actually going to graduate from a local high school with honors. So she really did pull herself out of it. But her mom called me a week ago and said, I really need something from you. And I said, what do you need? And she said, I need another Matilda because I washed it and it fell apart. Well, that didn't surprise me at all, because those are cheap little things, that it fell apart. And so I said, no problem, I can give you another one or two. And then because they come in 5 different colors, I said, what color was Matilda? Because I didn't remember. It was just something I did as a pattern. And she told me it was gray. And I said, okay, fine, come and pick up 2 or 3 gray Matildas. So if you lose them again. And then when Otter this time came to pick it up, and she said, do you know that I have carried Matilda with me every day since you gave her to me in my pocket? And I said, no, tell me about that. And she said, whenever I felt mad, or like I wanted to be mean to somebody, I would put my hand in and talk to and squeeze Matilda, and then I wouldn't do it. So that little physical thing made a big difference to this particular client. So there's little things that through EAGALA I have learned. Now, I would have never handed a stuffed horse to somebody and said, this is your Matilda, had not she used the word Matilda in the arena. Adult story. The individual who named the horse is ex-wife. One horse was his ex-wife, and one was what he wanted to be. Because for some reason or other, those 2 horses that were in the arena that day picked up on him. And one horse stood over in the corner, and the other went up and nuzzled him. The one who went up and nuzzled him, that was totally out of her character. She was usually the horse that usually stood back. They reversed roles. So the horse that stayed in the corner was his ex-wife. It was through that action that he was able to talk about some of the things that happened in their marriage and how he could find hope for the rest of his life, because he was actually suicidal, which is why he was here. So these are just a few of the magic stories. One more story, and then we'll move on a little bit. When I had to get my certification, I went into Elgin, and there were 4 horses in the arena, and they brought in 2 teenage girls who had were sisters. They were 11 months apart and they hated each other. One had actually put the other in the hospital because of beating her up so much. And they were taking advantage of the free counseling because they had been in office counseling for 4 years and the two girls still could not get along. They were 16 and 15. And my job to get my license was to, in 2 sessions, see if I could make a difference. And I'm thinking, okay, this ought to be interesting. So I send them in the arena with 4 different horses. And I say, show me how you're feeling using these 4 horses. Well, the one girl went up to 2 that were actually paint. They were brown and white horses. They were about the same height and got in between them and was petting both of them at the same time, one with each hand. The other girl who did not want to be there went over in the corner of the arena and stood with her arms folded, looking at the wall. So now we have 2 horses, 2 horses being petted, 2 horses just kind of wandering around, looking around. One of the horses, that was a spotted one, went over to the girl that was in the corner and just blew on her. And horses do that. It's their natural way of saying, are you friend or foe? They go, pfft. Anybody who's been around horses has seen that. And if they've been eating grass, you want to move because you're going to get sprayed. But anyhow, she breathed on that girl. The girl took a step, did it again, and actually walked that girl the full length of the arena. So she was by her sister in between the other 2 horses. So now we've got two girls between 2 horses, one petting him, one with her arms folded, and the third horse keeping, so that's making so that the one with her arms folded can't get out. And now I'm nervous. I'm thinking, oh, this looks like trouble. And I started to walk towards it. And the equine specialist who was with me took my arm and, no, don't let it play out. So then the other horse that was in the arena was a black one. And so the black one decided to walk over with this bunch of 2 kids and 3 horses. As it came over, the spotted horse that I was telling you about that blew the girl across turned around and nipped that horse and wouldn't let it come in with the group. The girl that was holding her arms folded started sobbing, leaning on that horse. I said, can you tell us about this crying? What's happening? And from then, things began to change. When they came back the next week, the mother said they were actually being nice to each other. They had gone back to eating at the dinner table together, and there were lots of changes. So we were able to talk about communication among the 2 of them rather than competition among the 2 of them, which was the main issue. So that's the stories showing you that EAGALA works. And I could go with stories forever because I've been doing EAGALA now for 6 years. And I have 6 years of success stories, which is scary because people say, well, that means you're a really good counselor. No, it just means I had a bunch of horses and I let some people communicate with them. So here's the next slide. This is 2 of my favorite horses. And it's not the 2 I told you about, but they're putting their nose through the gate to say hi to you. So if you can unmute yourselves, what story would you tell looking at this? Hey, Danielle, did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
I think Danielle left us.
No, I didn't. I'm here.
Unmute yourself. Somebody, what story would you tell with this?
They look like they're telling me hello. Like, how detailed of a story are we talking?
Just see what you would come up with this. If you were coming for EAGALA and this is how the horses came up to you, what would you say? What would you think was going on?
They want to be my friend.
Want to be your friend? Can any of you, Margarita's raising her hand or something. I don't know what she's doing. What would you think, Margarita?
I think they are disagree, both of them, no? They are in some different way, different thinking.
Okay. If you had to tell a story, what would you tell?
That both of them, they need to connect each other.
Okay.
To be in empathy. Both of them, they need to share empathy, feel.
So you don't see them being friends with each other?
No, because both of them, they are in different angles.
Correct. So
They
if you had
faces.
to name one of them, what would you name them?
I don't know.
I can tell you what a teenager did when I was doing it by, notice the dirty nose on this one?
Uh-huh.
It was dirty nose and clean nose.
Oh, okay.
Anyhow, but this is the situation. Now, if you were out there and the horses were real, it would be an entirely different story.
Mhm.
But you can see how it would change. So I just put this in so that you could kind of see it. So now, here's another picture of oops, let's get back here. Here's another picture. Now you're in the pasture. Same horses, if you notice, dirty nose is on your right. Clean nose is standing back looking. So Marguerite, you picked up well on their body language. They're not together. They're standing in their hay. Does not make me happy. What kind of a story could you come up with using this picture? I think I put everybody to sleep, Danielle.
No, you didn't. It's just hard to come up with on the spot.
It is. So it's actually, and if you were teenagers, that would take you 30 seconds. That, because most of my work is free. So this is Lucky's Farm. This is where I'm at, out by Durand. I will go through the next screen and then we'll do the questions or comments. The information and a lot of the pictures came from Reigns of Change, which is the one in Elgin that you heard me talking about, and Refugee Services, which is actually, what you can tell, it's not refugee people, but refugee horses. So we take them out of the kill pen and try to save their life instead of having them killed for dog food. EAGALA.org, which is our home office in Utah. And then that's my website, Lucky's Farm, EAGALAtherapy.com. So that's where the pictures and everything came for. Let's see, next one. This is the equine therapy that you will find in Northern Illinois. So if you're looking for an equine therapy place, these are 3 of them. One of them is Braveheart, that's in Boone County. They only do EAGALA 1 day a week. The rest of the time, they do a different kind of equine therapy for the veterans. Reigns of Change is the one in Elgin, and that lady in Elgin, who, Amy Blossom, now is ending up being the president of the United States, EAGALA. She's the CEO now. And then Hope Reigns, which is that last one. That's the one that is going to be in the Rockford Park District building when they get it done at Lockwood Park. So then we'll get to the end. Thank you. And this is me with Lucky before I had white hair. This is kind of when I started this whole thing. A teacher friend came out, and Lucky is not biting me. He's just resting his nose on my arm. Because that was how Lucky was. He put his nose on everybody's shoulder. So questions or comments? It's been over an hour, Danielle. Am I okay?
Okay.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
Comments? Thank you very much. It was an excellent presentation. I like it.
I agree.
Thank you.
I mean, I feel like you're so comfortable. I feel like you really know it like inside and out, you know, so it makes us
I
confident
do.
in that. Yeah.
I have lived it. And it wasn't until I started seriously doing it and the magic, you know, I've mostly practiced with teenagers, naughty teenagers, I should say. And the parents think I'm God. And I keep saying, no, I'm not. I'm just opening the door for them to create their own change. And that's been the hardest thing for me, is I don't want to feel like a person making magic.
Well, you definitely are helping a lot of people, so don't sell yourself too short there.
And Lucky Farm Incorporated will be moving to Texas in another month.
Very sad to see you go.
I am too, but I'm excited to be in Texas where I can do it year round.
True.
Because
Hey, Judy,
my
would you mind?
arena is wonderful, but it's not heated.
Fair. Would you mind if anyone had questions after this, if I shared like your contact information or something like that, an email
Oh, that's
even?
fine.
Okay.
No, go ahead. You can share my email. I am in my website at least once a week to check on things, because the website does say that we are temporarily closed and will be moving. So It doesn't give an address yet.
Sure. Okay.
So
And
they
yeah,
could be in either one.
So I will follow up with the attendees and the ones that registered that maybe couldn't come tonight, with all of that information, as well as the events that I talked about earlier. And I have the recording of this too, so they can watch it again or share with people that they know.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, because it really is so effective. And I wish we were as smart as United Kingdom in mental health treatment. And actually, insurance companies like EAGALA, for anybody who's thinking about adding that to your practice, because in 4 or 5 sessions, EAGALA can make a difference. Where in sessions where clients that I had in my brick and mortar practice for a year, I wouldn't see any difference. They could come in and tell me all the right answers, but they couldn't go out and do them. And it's something about connecting with the horses that allows them to go out and do them.
Well, we like it. Thank you so much, Judy. I appreciate your time.
Thank you
Thank
for the
you.
opportunity.
Everyone have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you, Margarita.
Thank you. Bye.
Mhm.